What is up, guys? Team Feels here with another video, and today we're going to be uploading a deck profile per usual. You guys already know the drill. Before we hop into the video, obviously you guys know the drill as well, in addition to the normal drill, which is our deck profile announcement, and that is to smash that subscribe button and turn the notification bell on and give the video a nice big thumbs up. It is sincerely appreciated. I know that you guys are the best subscribers in the world. We're quickly approaching 800. Obviously the goal is, to break 1,000, but we're approaching 800 fairly quickly. And I've honestly done little to no promoting through other brands of social media. I've just done this all through YouTube and you guys sharing stuff, because I can see the analytics that you guys share stuff, so it's sincerely appreciated. But we're going to go ahead and jump right into the deck profile. Okay, so before we start with the main deck, I want to take a quick second to partially apologize for a delay in my usual upload speeds. I know that typically speaking, I upload once a week. I think it's been like 2.5 weeks since I've done a video. I've been extremely busy, super busy. I know that, typically it's not something you have to apologize for, but I had a lot of family that actually came in and was visiting because my great-grandmother turned 100 years old. Big surprise, woohoo. So I was actually super busy for the last couple of weeks. But now I have a little more time. I can film a deck profile and upload it for you guys to see. So let's start with the Mermail deck profile. Now, I also haven't updated a Mermail deck list in forever. I don't even know the last time I posted one. It was definitely pre-support, I think, with the new cards. But starting off with the Mermail monsters, we play 3 copies of Mermail Abystius and 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Megalo for the level 7s. So you don't really need a second Megalo. It doesn't really come up very often. Sometimes it'll come up, but if you want to play a second one, there are substitutes, but I personally like just playing the 1. And the Abystius is fantastic because it's just a 1 card cost to summon it, and on top of that you get a card back when you do so. Whereas the Megalo, we're not playing any of the Abyss spells or traps because they don't really do much for us in the strategy in the boards that we're going for. So the Megalo is basically there just to OTK or hit a bunch of big damage in general. So both of these cards being fantastic choices nonetheless, it helps you get your engine going. Then we have 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Pike. Pike is a discard to search for a level 3 water from deck, which is actually pretty useful too. There's a few level 3 waters in here that you definitely want to pick up, and actually it's going to be the next 2 cards that I show you. So Pike has some definite usage there. The first level 3 that we can search off of it would be the Mermail Abyss Gund. And when Gund is discarded, doesn't have to be by a water effect, but just discarded in general, you could pitch it off of Twin Twisters if you wanted to. You get to special summon a Mermail monster from your graveyard. That's actually pretty relevant. So if you Twin Twisters, you just gain a free special summon out of it. That's actually a pretty neat effect. Those are all the Mermail monsters, though. Moving on to our next engine, we have 3 copies of Deep Sea Minstrel. So Minstrel is the second level 3 that I was referring to that you can search for off of your Pike. Gund Minstrel are the 2 that you can search off of Pike, and essentially what you're going to do with Minstrel in your hand is you're going to pitch it with another water monster to look at your opponent's hand and banish a card from their hand until the end of the turn. So if you open this with like Dragoons, basically you get to take a card from your opponent's hand and banish it for the turn, and then you get to search off Dragoons, which just gets you going with your engine, and it helps take a hand trap out of your opponent's hand, which is extremely important. So Minstrel is definitely a very important piece to this deck's functionality. Now we have a playset of Deep Sea Diva. There is a crazy 1-card combo with this that is absolutely fantastic. I think that it's an amazing combo. Then literally all you need to do is open Deep Sea Diva on your first turn, and you can pretty much do this combo in its entirety, which is fantastic. Card's really powerful, just being able to summon a Neptibus from deck, and on top of that it's a tuner, so it makes your Halka Fibrax plays even more relevant. Moving on to the Atlantean monsters, though, we do have that 3 copies of Neptibus that I referred to. Basically, you send an Atlantean from your deck to the graveyard, and then you search for another Atlantean. So what you're going to end up doing with the effect of Neptibus is you're usually going to be sending one of your 3 copies of Atlantean Dragoons, and then searching another copy of Dragoons. That way you can not only have one in hand, but you could trigger Dragoon's graveyard effect to search for a Sea Serpent. So that's actually very relevant, and that's a big reason that Deep Sea Diva is a 1-card combo. Then moving on to the other Atlantean that we play, I just play 2 heavy infantry. I'm not playing any marksman. I think that heavy infantry was perfectly fine. It just pops cards. I didn't think that main decking a marksman was really something that you had to do. So I opted not to main deck one at all. Then basically for some of the other engines in the deck, we have the 3 Swap Frog and 1 Ronin. This just gets you into totally awesome more quickly. That way you can set up a nice negation on your board, which is actually pretty important. You want to be able to get that set up. That way your opponent can't hit you with some big hand traps, or you could just completely cut their board off. Obviously, that's another option too. So the Frog engine, in my opinion, is fantastic. Then we have 3 copies of Gamseel. So if you are, going second, which typically you actually want to go first with this deck, but if your opponent wins the roll and they make you go second in game 1, you have Gamseels to tribute over any other stuff that you need to tribute over. Obviously against, certain decks, Gamseel is going to be significantly better than others, but it's overall just a pretty good card to remove a card from your opponent's board. Then we have 2 copies of Lapis Dragon. Basically, when this gets added from your deck to your hand, you're going to special summon it. There are other times where you'll be able to do something similar, but for us and our end goal, obviously summoning it after searching it from deck is the major part that we're really looking to accomplish. Then we have 1 copy of Fishborg Launcher. This card is a very, very nice Halqifibrax target. Absolutely fantastic card. It just puts in so much work, and it's basically 3 monsters. It's first summon off of the Halq, it's the synchro monster it makes, and then it's the bounce back onto the field to use it as another link material. So you get a lot of usage out of it. Then lastly, we have the 1 copy of Moulin Glacia, because Moulin Glacia is a hand rip for 2. There are certain matchups that you could take this out against, or overall you could contemplate cutting it. I don't think that you need to cut it overall, but I understand against like Tri-Brigade, if you pitch a Nervor or a Kit, they just add back, and against Drytron, you're just giving them grave advantage, and those are 2 of the best decks right now. So if you wanted to cut Moulin Glacia, you could. I still think it's a good card regardless, because you could hit spell cards, trap cards, you could hit hand traps, stuff like that. So that's actually pretty important. Those are all the monsters though. So now moving on to our spell lineup, we have 3 copies of Deep Sea Aria. So Deep Sea Aria, essentially the concept of this card is you banish a water monster from grave, and you're going to search your deck for a level 4 lower Sea Serpent type monster, which if you open up something like your Deep Sea Minstrel and a Dragoon, you can pitch the Minstrel and Dragoon and take a card from your opponent's hand. You get the search off the Dragoon, and then you could use the Deep Sea Aria to banish Minstrel and search for another Sea Serpent, which is a very, very powerful play if you can pull something like that off. So this card overall, Deep Sea Aria, is fantastic for consistency purposes in the Mermail Atlantean strategy. Then we have some back row removal. I play 2 Cosmic Cyclone because there are going to be times where you need to drop something like this and hit your opponent's back row. Considering the results of the YCS today, I'm sure we're going to see a huge uptick in Prank Kids for a little while, understandably so. The deck is very powerful. I feel like the deck does not see as much play considering how good it really is, but I think that Cosmic Cyclone is a card that can definitely stop it from being as powerful of a deck as it is, because you just hit the fusion spell in their back row in the standby phase, and then they don't get access to their Battle Butler. So it's actually pretty important. Then we have 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent and 1 copy of Called by the Grave. These are pretty self-explanatory. If your opponent hand traps you during your first turn, obviously you can use these, or if it's you know, you're going second and your opponent sets up a board and they try and negate stuff with their monster effects, then you can very well just use the talents and the called by to do some sort of effect to either cut them off and stop them, or to possibly take a card or draw some more cards, things like that. So there are many options that you can go about performing with these cards, which is what I love about their versatility. But that is the main deck. We're going to go ahead and jump on over to our extra deck and take a look at how that has shaped up to be. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at our extra deck and basically go over the importance of a lot of the cards in here, and I'll do my best to explain why I'm playing some of these cards as well. So starting off, we play 2 copies of Totally Awesome because not only can we make it with our swap frog and our Ronin totem, but we can also make it with a copy of Bahamut Shark. So the Bahamut Shark actually is more easily summonable than I thought it would be originally. This card is actually pretty easy to summon out with the turn 1 combo that you're going for. Obviously we'll see more as to why when we progress through the extra deck, but the copy of Bahamut Shark definitely puts in a whole lot of work alongside the Toads. Then we play 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Gaios. This doesn't come up a lot. It will come up occasionally. I think that this card does have some definite reasons to play it. Primarily, if you're playing against a deck like Tri-Brigade and they have, you know, a Tri-Brigade name on field and they try and banish special, you can just chain the Abyss Gaios and probably cut them off from being able to function. So that's one of the upsides of Gaios. The downside is that he's not ridiculously easy to summon because your Megalo and your Teus play doesn't come up exceptionally often. So let's say you don't want to play the Gaios and you want to play something different, you could very well play something along the lines of Abyss Dweller. So I will leave that up to you guys, but I do like playing the Gaios still for those occasional plays. Moving on to the Synchro cards, however, we have 1 copy of Formula Synchron, 1 copy of our Dragite, the Adamancipator level 8 Synchro, which is actually very good. Our Croc Boy over here, Mr. Steve Irwin, and then we have our Satellite Warrior. So these are the 4 Synchros that we play, so I'm going to kind of explain these as a whole. The Formula Synchron, you can probably guess how that gets summoned out. It's typically going to be by your Helga Fibrax during your opponent's turn. That play does give you access to the Satellite Warrior because typically speaking, when you do that play, you're going to have the Dragite on field, so you can just use the Dragite to negate a spell or trap. You can banish the Helga Fibrax, get the Formula Synchron to draw a card, and then you can use Formula Synchron and the Dragite to make Satellite Warrior, which will allow you to pop 2 cards on your opponent's field, which is actually very good. Very strong card, which is really nice. And then the Croc is great, obviously, for drawing, but additionally to that, the better portion is his effect of being able to discard to pop. It is a quick effect, so the fact that you can respond to your opponent's plays with that is actually insane. So keep in mind that being able to respond to something with a quick pop, it basically makes it like Dryden 2.0. That's essentially what it feels like. Then moving on to the Link monsters now, pretty sizable Link lineup. We play 7 Link monsters. We have 1 copy of Link Karibo because we do have the Neptibus that will come up, and then the Fishborg Launcher is another card that comes up too, so keep in mind that the Link Karibo does have multiple cards that you can make it with. Then this is one of the key pieces to the combo, and that is our Bujinki Ahashima. So this card basically allows you to go into your Bahamut Shark very easily. The starting combo, which I'm not going to show in this video, I will show it in another video if we get to 800 subscribers. I will show you guys some test hands and things like that. That way you can see how the deck functions a little bit more. But basically what happens is this card allows you to go into Bahamut Shark very easily on your turn 1, and obviously it makes it more difficult for your opponent to play through when you have a Bahamut Shark and a Toad on board. But for our next set of monsters, these are our Link 2s. We have the one copy of Mistar Boy, the one copy of Halqifibrax, and the one copy of Marincess Coral. Wow, I can't even speak. Marincess Coral Anemone. I felt like Nemo from Finding Nemo. I couldn't say anemone properly. But we have the Mistar Boy, which is going to be a boost in stats for our water monsters, which is obviously very powerful. In addition, if it is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target a water monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Any water monster. It's actually really, really good. The Halqifibrax, everyone already knows what this card does. I feel like I don't have to go over it. You're just going to summon a tuner from your deck, level 3 or lower, and then during your opponent's turn, you can make a formula if you want to, or you can just use it to link off. Like you can just literally just link the Hulk off for something different, which is kind of nice. And then the Coral Anemone, this comes up kind of at random. I wouldn't say it's specifically one particular thing, but occasionally you'll get a play where you need the Coral Anemone, and when you use it, it's one of the best things in the entire deck. So because it'll get you to another negation sometimes it'll get you to an OTK, things like that. But moving on to the last two cards, these would be our Link 4s. We have one copy of Apollousa, because Apollousa in this deck is part of the turn 1 combo. It's also just a really powerful card overall right now. A lot of people are playing this in many of the best decks. And, you know, when you look at the way that the results are showing Apollousa functioning in those decks, you will quickly find that the card is pretty nuts, because if you set it up properly, you get 3 negations out of it, which is fantastic. Then the other Link 4 would be our Access Code Talker, which the Access Code Talker doesn't need as much of an explanation. Essentially, it's going to function as a big beat stick, a multi-pop card, and probably some of the largest damage that this deck can swing with. So keep in mind that there is a bunch of functions for Access Code Talker, but typically speaking, you don't want to make it unless you know you can push for game. If you're not sure if you can push for game or not, then my advice would be just hold off on making access code and go for something else. But that is the extra deck. We're going to go ahead and hop on over to our side deck and view that so I can show you guys how I'm countering the meta. So now we've made our way to the last portion of the deck profile, which is going to be our side deck. And the side deck is pretty well set as far as figuring out ways to counter the opponent, as well as just the meta in general. So starting off, we have 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Obviously a card that's fantastic against multiple decks that do a lot of searching. Typically most people think Drytron is the first thing that comes to mind, but keep in mind too that Invoked and like Shadal Invoked and all those other decks like that, even Salamangreat, this card is also good against. So there are multiple decks that Droll does a lot of work against, and overall it just functions as a pretty speedy halt to your opponent's strategy. Then the other hand trap that we're playing is 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. This hurts Virtual World, it hurts Tri-Brigade, it hurts Invoked, it hurts a whole bunch of decks. A lot of rogue decks too. But keep in mind that this card is just overall absolutely fantastic and definitely worth playing, because cutting off your opponent from banishing is usually going to be the end of the game. Then I know I said we didn't main deck any copies, but we do side deck 1 copy of Atlantean Marksman. In case we're playing against a back row deck, I can cut a heavy infantry out and I can put in a marksman, which is actually pretty important, being able to out at least 1 more back row. Then the last monster that we play is the 1 copy of Dino Wrestler Pankratops, because why not? This card is really, really good and it gets the job done. So definitely worth playing the copy of Pankratops, because it outs 2 cards for the price of 1. Moving on to the spells though, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, because this card shuts off our opponent's boards. I thought about playing Forbidden Droplet, but I was thinking to myself, you know, my resources are way too important for me to even consider getting rid of them. And I said, let's just play Dark Ruler and shut off a board and hopefully just set up a board that's better than theirs was. That way they can't function. But obviously, that being said, the downside is that you don't really get to hit them for any damage. So kind of takes away from part of the strategy. Then we play some more back row removal, 3 Twin Twister and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. I thought about just playing 2 Twin and the one Feather Duster, and then figuring out another card to play. But I after thinking about it, like I thought about cutting like the Marksman too, and then like putting some other cards in. Like you could cut a Twin Twister and you could cut Marksman and play like 2 Nibiru or something. But I said, you know what, there are going to be decks that have a decent amount of back row, and I'm going to want to out those as quickly as possible, and all of these cards do so, which is pretty darn cool. But that brings the deck profile essentially to a close. We went over the main deck, the main monsters, spells, obviously no traps because there's no traps at all in this deck. We went over the extra deck and then the side decks, main monsters and spells that we utilize in there. So obviously a deck that has a very high ceiling as far as combos go. That's one of the things that I love so much about Mermail, is that it really just provides you with a sense of explosiveness, because you can just combo off on these ridiculous combos, but also a sense of control because you set up so many negations that your opponent really can't do much. It's actually pretty darn cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as I always say, if you guys did, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, obviously give the video a thumbs up because it is sincerely appreciated, and obviously I will see you guys in the next video. So for right now, this is Team Yugi Feels signing out.